Hello, everyone. This is Alexander Bush, your chairman of the Republican Party here in Montgomery County. And I'm going to start a new interview series here since we are all stuck at home and we're all going stir crazy. So to kick it off, I wanted to have a little conversation with our former state party chairman, Diana Waterman, who was here for when we, what was it, getting a Republican governor elected and a Republican president elected, right?
Would be correct.
So why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Okay, hi. Thank you, Alexander. And it's not used to seeing Alexander, all that big long name, but thank you so much for inviting me. For your listeners and viewers, my name is Diana Waterman, and I am the former chairman of the Maryland Republican Party. I was elected in April of 2013 and served through the end of 2016 and just a smidge into 2017, just long enough to go to the inauguration of President Trump. And it was a great time. We did some amazing things. To be a Republican in Maryland is a tough haul. I mean, you guys in Montgomery County really know how tough a haul it is. But during my term as chairman, we did some amazing things. Not only did we manage to get Larry Hogan elected governor, we increased our numbers in the House dramatically, in the Senate a little bit, grew our number of locally elected Republicans, grew our number of registered Republicans across the state. And then in 16, we did the unthinkable when we elected Donald Trump and got a Republican back in the White House.
You know, it was interesting. I actually happened to know some inside information that for just a little bit, the DNC was actually worried about Maryland. I know that sounds crazy in like a presidential election. So I had a radio show on CBS, and we actually had a tentative offer to have Michelle Obama come on the show like 2 weeks before the election. And then the whole Anthony Weiner story broke again, and the Obamas didn't want to do any press for like a week and a half, and so that scuttled that. But it was clear that they actually thought there was just this little thing in the back of their mind that thought, you know what, they seem to be organizing fairly well in Maryland. Maybe we should just do a little bit there just to kind of be careful, which I thought was kind of impressive given the numbers.
It was interesting. They showed up in Maryland, the Democrats, a little bit, and just the response that they got was incredibly underwhelming. When, I mean, I forget exactly what, but one of the universities, they showed this big empty gym with them speaking to just a handful of people right in front of them on the stage. So it was an interesting time.
So moving us forward a little bit, I wanted to get your perspective, not just as a former state party chair, but currently you're the president of the Republican Women's Clubs in Maryland, correct?
Yes, I was going to add that on, but you got that for me. I'm president of the Maryland Federation of Republican Women in my second term in that office.
So I know a lot of other people are talking about this, but I wanted to get your opinion on some of the votes that got rammed through at the very end of the legislative session, especially I'm going to kind of combine two topics here, Kerwin and Coronavirus. It seemed like it was a very, very bad vote, and that some Republicans voted for it kind of undermined the governor. On the other hand, it looks like with the economic devastation from coronavirus and the shutdown, that maybe it'll just be literally impossible to implement Kerwin. What are your thoughts on that?
I would have to agree wholeheartedly with you on that. First, just backing up a little bit, I mean, as I'm sure all of your listeners, viewers know, we had an abbreviated legislative session. Normally they're in session for 90 days, and they ended much sooner than that. One of the silver linings in that was they didn't have as much time to accomplish as much bad legislation. We had to be thankful for the fact that they had to end quickly because they weren't able to put through as many spending measures as they really had on the books and as many horrible pieces of legislation that they wanted to get through. Unfortunately, Kerwin was their signature piece and something they were bound and determined to ram through. And it has a massive, massive price tag. I mean, authorities say you can't even really estimate what the final price tag on this will be because there's so many uncalculated expenses that weren't rolled into the official legislative fiscal note. But having coronavirus, which is a horrible, awful thing, and the devastation that it's going to wreak not only on our people in our country and in the state of Maryland, but our economics. I mean, we're seeing that already with massive unemployment, and the CARE Act having to be put through, which was a kind of an odd thing for Republicans to be saying, we're really going to we want this to happen. But when we close all the businesses and don't let people go to work, something has to give to make sure that people still have food and lodging, can put a roof over their heads, etc. But I really see that whenever we come out of this coronavirus and we go to the new normal of what our life is, because it's not going to be like it was before, our legislators are going to find that it's impossible, I think, to implement Kerwin, that the governor has put a budget freeze on all spending in our state, with the exception of things that deal with coronavirus and paying salaries of state employees, and has basically said anything that's going to cause us to spend money is going to be vetoed. And how do you come back after the economy has been devastated and everybody's hurting, and pass tax increases? And that's the only way they're going to be able to fund Kerwin. So I think we're better off in that regard.
Well, we just saw here in Montgomery County just about 2.5 weeks ago, our county executive proposed raising property taxes to cover increased school costs. And there was a huge backlash against it because one, it's just that the timing is really bad, that if you are someone who has to actually pay property taxes, you are probably hurting in a lot of other ways. And what was especially egregious, I thought, is he actually said in his budget, I think coronavirus is going to make our revenues for income tax even worse, so we need to raise property tax to make up for it.
That's unbelievable that any elected leader would say that. It would be that blind and deaf to the situation that his citizens are going through.
So it seems like we're going to get one of two things. Either they're going to back off on tax increases, maybe for a year or so, or they're not. Yes. Either way, we need to be ready to take advantage of that, because
and it's going to be a great opportunity for Republicans at all levels, not only in our state, but in the country as well, I think, especially in blue states like ours, because I don't think I agree with you. They're probably not going to break their tax ways, but they're going to have a lot more trouble selling it.
Well, the advantage we have trying to maintain fiscal conservatism on the state level is, unlike the federal government, the state just can't print more money. No. So unless they can borrow it or they can tax it, but they can't just print it. So either we're going to go into massive deficits until our credit rating is horrible, or they're actually going to have to cut some stuff, or they're going to have to do massive tax increases. And I think 2 out of 3 of those are going to be really, really bad, and we need to be prepared to pounce on them, as the media describes what we do, when they do it.
Yes, not only pounce, but have candidates in the pipeline for the 2022 election to, when everybody is still really hurting for what's happened, to say, we're not going to tax you the way these people are.
Well, it seems, especially here in Montgomery County, that it's like our elected officials are following just sort of this liberal agenda, sort of checklist of all the leftist things they need to do, and they're not actually paying attention to what's really happening in the county. We had a lot of people upset over our ICE policy, and they just completely ignored that, and they're passing, oh, you can't discriminate against people because of their hairstyle or whatever. And it's like they're not even listening to what's really going on. It would be nice to, if this reveals their complete disconnect from practical reality, if they really try to maintain all of their budgetary plans, spending plans, regardless of how the economy's doing.
I would agree with you. And unfortunately, I think they've got a script and a playbook, and they just keep going back to it. When all else fails, you go back to your script, you go back to your playbook, and that they keep trying to trot that right back out and see, maybe if we twist it a little bit or turn it a little bit, we can make it work, because this is what's worked for us before, and this is what's going to work again. Only now our world is very different, and it's probably never going to be exactly the same as it was before. And hopefully that'll be something that our being fiscal conservatives will resonate with people, a few more people in your county in particular, and a few more people across our state.
So speaking of changes because of coronavirus, what are your thoughts on doing the June primary entirely by mail? Well, almost entirely by mail.
Yes, we will have a voting location in every county or something like that. It's interesting from an academic point of view. It is interesting because it's something that we have not tried before, something we haven't done. From a civic-minded conservative Republican, it scares the bejesus out of me because there are so many opportunities for fraud that will exist. And I mean, the liberals always say we always are little, chicken little and screaming that the sky is going to fall and fraud is going to happen. But not that our Board of Elections people are not well qualified in running elections. They've never done this before. They're going to get one trial run with a special election for CD7, but then we're going to launch right into this one. These are dynamics and techniques and stuff that they have never had to do before. It's kind of like, when you're confronted with a new situation and you don't even know what you don't know. You don't know enough to ask what you need to know. I know that they are probably in conversation with other states that have done mail votes, but it's a whole different dynamic animal than in-person votes are. And dealing with the manpower to run that, I don't know, I know you've gone out door to door, as I've gone out door to door many a time, and our data for we go door to door comes from the Board of Elections. And how many times have you walked up to a house that's got like 4 different last names, and you knock on the door and you talk to the Smiths and you ask about the Jones, they're like, oh yeah, they lived here before us. We bought the house from them. And what about the Browns? Well, no, the Browns lived here before the Smiths. And you're going back 10 years, but these people are all still on the voting rolls. Are they all going to get ballots? And what happens if somebody turns in their ballots? I mean, how do we know who's truly an active registered voter and entitled to vote and who isn't?
And you could get, I think you just described it, but like bottom line is you could get in the mail a lot of ballots for other people. And it's not like they're going to be doing, signature sample comparisons. They're going to be checking the paper for fingerprints. You could fill out and send in every ballot that comes to your mailbox. And maybe you don't even get your own, but you could vote for several other people. Exactly.
And there's no way to know if you voted or you voted for just yourself or you voted for all those other people. You and I wouldn't do that. We're good, honest voters, and we throw those other ballots out. But not everybody's that way. Somebody might just to see if they can get away with it.
Well, I mean, it makes you wonder, since there's probably going to be so many people who actually want their ballot not getting it because it's going to go to their last address or the address before that, that if every mailbox is getting one of these, or most mailboxes are getting one of these on specific days, you could just go along and steal them all out of people's mailboxes. I mean,
don't be giving people ideas, Alex.
Well, then maybe I'll stop that one there.
Maybe one thing we might want to suggest, and we've not really had discussions about this, is requesting absentee ballots. Because if you request an absentee ballot, you're at least getting your ballot.
That's a very good idea.
Board of Elections might not like me promoting that, to have them send, they're going to have to send all the ballots out, but anybody who applies for an absentee ballot, it's coming from a different pile than the regular ballots will be.
Well, and that way you can actually make sure you get your own and someone else doesn't vote for you. Because if someone else does, then you're going to have to go in person and vote provisionally. And I get the feeling the local Board of Elections are trying to make these actual in-person voting centers they're going to try and actively discourage anyone who doesn't absolutely have to go from going there. So I don't know whether they're going to be like grilling people and like, do you really need to be here? Is your mask secure enough? So yeah, make sure you get your ballot. But moving on to a last topic though, the Maryland Republican Party state convention seems to be thrown into limbo because currently there are enough of us that currently it's illegal for us all to meet in person, right?
Exactly, yes. Based on the governor, there are definitely more than 10 of us in the state party. And since only 10 of us, and actually not even those 10 are not supposed to get together because we're all supposedly would live in our own different houses, so that we're all supposed to stay in our houses unless it's an essential activity. And I don't think having a state party convention is going to qualify as an essential activity. Easter Bunny, yes. Maryland State Party, Republican Party's convention, no. So yeah, as of now, sorry about that. That was the dog.
Oh, I don't mind at all.
Okay. Yeah, that as of now, our convention's kind of in limbo. I mean, there are a number of factors that weigh into when we're supposed to have it, when we can have it, and they involve bylaws and rules and regulations. So it's kind of up in the air now still when exactly, and will we have to have more than one convention, and how all that's going to play out.
So, and that complicates things for you also, because you are running for an office at one of these or the convention, correct?
That is correct. I have decided to run for National Committeewoman. The RNC has 3 positions, Republican National Committee, for those who do not live and speak and breathe our jargon. That would be our state party chairman, which was the office I held before, and then a National Committee man and a National Committee woman. I am running for National Committeewoman this go around. And Nicolai Ambrose, who is our current National Committeewoman, is also running for re-election for her 3rd term. I served 2 terms for chairman. I would like the opportunity to serve our state party again as National Committeewoman. Having been chairman, I don't want to go back and do that one again. That one I'm happy to leave to other people. But no, all joking aside, I think it's really important that we don't have the same person serve for a long, lengthy period of time. New ideas, new approaches. One of the things that I did when I was chairman is work very hard to unify our party, to help bring us together and work together. I'd like that opportunity again to try and serve in that capacity as National Committeewoman, and bring the experience and the skill and the relationships that I formed as the state party chairman to National Committeewoman, to do what I can help our Maryland Republican Party get more Republicans elected and grow our party registration and spread our message.
So now we have a lot of new people who are central committee members since just the last few years. The people who might not know you as well, what are some of your accomplishments that you had when you were the state party chair?
Okay. Well, for starters, it's tough, as we've talked about. It's tough being a Maryland Republican, and it's tough to raise money, even harder to raise money in the state. When I took over as chairman, we were well over 100,000, probably in the $150,000 range of being in debt. During my term as chairman, not only did we retire that debt, but we put our state on a state party on a strong financial foundation, so that they were able to continue to make great advancements. We also helped the governor's campaign when he was doing public funding for public funding for his first campaign. We were able, thanks to a provision in the campaign finance laws, to be a strong fundraising force and enable him to have even more commercials on the air and so forth. So there was the financial one, and we're successful in doing that. But additionally, we talked about already about, we elected Governor Hogan, first Republican governor since Bob Ehrlich, in 2014. But in that same election, we had a red wave kind of in this state. We took our House of Delegates numbers from 43 to 50.
Yeah, I was a precinct captain in LD6, so which we flipped 4 Democrats to 4 Republicans. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I
don't know. It's kind of a rare thing. Well, I mean, actually, when you look back in not so distant future, I mean, Ellen Sauerbrey will tell you that, you basically, the joke was you could have a House caucus meeting in a phone booth and you still had a little bit of extra room. But we grew the numbers in the House of Delegates to 50, and we took the number in the state Senate from 12 to 14. We increased the number of locally elected Republicans. We had more locally elected Republicans than Democrats across the whole state. We had 5 out of 9 county executives, and several of our states were flipped from being plurality Democrat to having more Republicans registered than Democrats. And then carrying on that tradition, while Governor Hogan was our governor, we continued strong fundraising, working with all of our locally electeds and state legislative reps as well, to get President Trump to help elect President Trump, which was also a pretty phenomenal thing. It didn't necessarily go, Maryland going for Trump, but we certainly got out a lot of Trump voters and generated a lot of enthusiasm. And personally speaking, it was really exciting going to that convention in Cleveland and being able to deliver all of Maryland's delegates to the next president, Donald Trump.
So one of the things that I heard in there that was most impressive to me was that you did so much fundraising before we had a Republican governor, before we had a Republican president, because what I find in Montgomery County is the greatest challenge is sort of the apathy and the people who say, yeah, I could donate money, but I don't see what you're going to win with my money, because we don't have any Republican elected officials in this county. And I imagine you probably were dealing with, when Obama was still the president and O'Malley was still the governor, I imagine there was a lot of convincing to convince people with money why they should even spend it on Maryland.
It was always an uphill battle. Now, you teed that one up beautifully, Alex, for me, but if nothing, I am a flaw of being maybe a little too honest. I will be perfectly honest that most of our fundraising real successes came after we had a Republican governor. And quite honestly, a huge amount of our fundraising happened in the 2015 Red, White, and Blue dinner when Donald Trump was our speaker. And that was a huge team effort on the part of all of our people. And Dave Bossie, our national committee man, myself, Nick Lee, my fundraising team, my executive director, everybody worked together. But it was easier to raise money once we had that Republican governor. People who didn't take calls actually took calls, but it still was a matter of having to sell them and to give them reasons why they should believe in our party. And that's the chairman's job. The chairman is the fundraiser. If you don't raise any money, it's the chairman's fault. If you raise a lot of money, regardless of who raises it, the chairman did a really good job. But I did make umpteen zillion calls. I used to tell people that I developed a very thick skin, or I'm going to need years of counseling because I got rejected a whole lot.
Well, it sounds like you have a dog you need to take care of. And I think you mentioned earlier that you had something else important you were celebrating today.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Today is my 35th wedding anniversary. So while I'm sitting here talking to you, my husband is sitting in the other room watching TV, waiting for me to get done with this. Since we couldn't go out and have a nice fancy dinner, I picked up something at one of our favorite restaurants, brought that home, and I'm making his favorite dessert, molten chocolate lava cakes.
All right. Well, I will let you get back to that. Thank you very much for kicking off our first interview.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to coming to Montgomery County again. I love my friends in Montgomery County.
Here we go.